Welcome back to the Astrobot Challenge, where I attempt to play literally every single game referencing Astrobot, hopefully share my thoughts on them, and also hopefully keep my ever-so-fragile sanity intact throughout the whole experience. We've got a fresh batch of games to cover today, with all of them having a rather unique sense of stylish flair to them. So, let's get started. Little Big Planet. So charming, so enjoyable, so tragic is it that your servers are gone and we've lost a lot of those community-created levels. And so annoying are those last few levels in the bunker. Jesus H. Christ, who designed that goddamn Wheel of Doom media molecule? Please tell me, I just want to talk. Anyway, aside from, that bit, Little Big Planet is probably one of the most charming 2D platformers you could probably play. Granted, it might be a little harder to get your hands on it these days, given how it's not available on modern systems, but if you want to rely on less than official means, I won't tell if you don't. The game was designed on the ethos of play, create, and share, and it shows. Not only is there a rather extensive level creator tool with tons of materials, objects, and other things to unlock and play around with to your heart's content. I personally didn't, because I kind of suck at level creation. Oops. But this design ethos also spreads to the pre-built levels in Adventure Mode. The story is delightfully nonsensical. Sackboy can be customized with all kinds of materials, costumes, and stickers. I made mine look like a smug little gremlin. But each level is made almost entirely out of craft materials: felt, papercraft, matchsticks, cardboard, hell, some NPCs are clearly just dolls, ghosts are just paper cutouts, and the clouds are literally hanging from the level ceiling. I once heard this game get described as something out of the mind of a Mad Blue Peter presenter, which is a very apt description. Each level also has some incredible theming, with themes ranging from an English back garden, the Wild West, the Russian wilderness, a bustling metropolis, and my personal favourite, a level that merges a wedding with the Mexican celebration Dia de los Muertos. Even the darker or more bleaker theme levels still have a lot of charm to them, everything always having tons of visual flair and something going on in the background. All of these things combined help to create a truly unique experience that very few games since its release have been able to match. And if you're concerned about replay value, each level has hidden prizes that can only be obtained by using a certain sticker as a switch, and some of them require stickers that are going to be collected in certain levels. Plus, the game tracks progress and gives you rewards for grabbing everything in a level, completing it without dying, or getting a certain score value. So if you want more stuff, it's worth testing your skills in levels you've already beaten to try and master them. However, it's not all perfect, mind you. Some puzzles in later levels can get a little tricky, some hazards tend to get overused in places, the Wild West will make you absolutely hate fire hazards, and the bunker will make you utterly despise electric hazards. And the controls were somewhat finicky. I'm not sure if it's just my controller or if other people had this issue, but I had Sackboy moving more into the foreground or background than I really didn't want him to, leading to a few unwanted and undeserved deaths. Also, Sackboy just wouldn't jump as high as I wanted, only doing this feeble little hop when I really needed a full force jump to clear a gap or hazard. And the jetpack controls were a tad too sensitive at times, with Sackboy moving too far in one direction and getting killed. Despite these frustrations holding it back somewhat, it's not enough to sour the overall experience, so I can feel confident giving it an 8 out of 10 ranking, placing it into low A tier. If I had to sum up Gravity Rush in one sentence, it would be Falling with Style, the video game. And also, I guess, the video game that defies the notion of genres would also be fitting, as it doesn't really neatly fit into any established genre convention. Not quite a platformer, not quite an action-adventure, not quite an open-world sandbox. I guess that's what happens when you let the player mess around with the fundamental forces of the universe. Between this and Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, we just need a 3D action game that lets you mess around with literal space, and we have ourselves an entire trifecta. Anyways, Gravity Rush is one of the games I was looking forward to revisiting the most, because god damn it, this isn't just one of the most unique experiences you can find on the Vita or PS Store, it's also one of the best. Set in a mysterious city in the sky that's actually attached to a giant stone pillar, don't question it, Gravity Rush puts you in control of Cat, an amnesiac girl who discovers that she can manipulate gravity thanks to a mysterious magical cat she names Dusty. Once again, don't question it. She then embarks on a journey to understand just what the heck is going on, learn how to use her powers, and ultimately save the city, known as Hexville, from mysterious creatures known as Nevi. I'm not gonna lie to you, half the fun of Gravity Rush is just flinging yourself across the city using your powers, occasionally literally dive-bombing and engaging with what can only be called gravity-powered dogfight at any Nevi that you come across. Thankfully, the developers seem to predict this, as not only do the missions and boss battles typically take place in wide open areas, allowing you to fully take advantage of your abilities, but the game is full of various challenges where you can test your abilities in pursuit of those ever-so-shiny gold medals. The personal highlight for me is easily the 3 rift planes you access at various points in the story. While they primarily serve as key story points and where you can unlock cat super attacks through mystical fruit trees, once again, don't question it, they also serve as true visual spectacle and some of the best playgrounds for your powers, minus a certain section halfway through the game where your shifting ability is heavily limited, but it luckily doesn't last too long compared to other examples of that trope. Honestly, if all that hasn't convinced you to give this one a try, then I can only conclude that you are sad, and I have no desire to converse with you any further. Good day to you. Anyways, this game gets easily the highest ranking so far, a full 10 out of 10 S tier. From one overly stylish game to arguably the grandfather of all of them, Devil May Cry, and by which I mean the original Devil May Cry for the PS2. Going back to DMC1 after knowing and playing what the series would then go on to become with DMC 3, 4, and 5 feels a little quaint by comparison, but it still holds up incredibly well despite suffering from the infamous first game syndrome at various points. No styles, limited unlockable moves and combos, no bloody palace mode, only 2 melee weapons and all the unlockable ones being guns, and a greater focus on puzzle solving and exploration, along with fixed camera angles. Although those last ones can be explained due to DMC1 being essentially a retooled version of a prototype build of what would then go on to become Resident Evil 4. The Resident Evil DNA being much more apparent here also extends to the overall tone of the game, with it focusing a lot more on gothic horror, the story being a fair bit darker, and overall the general atmosphere feels a fair deal more eerie compared to all other games in the series. While I personally wouldn't change the sequels and what they did for the series, I can't help but feel that we lost something by pivoting away from the more spooky atmosphere this game had. Honestly, because of all of these things, DMC1 stands out among the rest of the games, and has its own unique charm. Sure, it's still fun to play and still feels like a DMC game at heart, but if you're used to the more fluid and expansive games from DMC 3 onwards, you might feel this one feels a lot different and feels a bit primitive by comparison. Also, it might be a fair deal harder than the sequels, mainly due to enemies and bosses hitting harder, greatly limited healing options, and the previously mentioned lack of combat options. Oh, there's not that much boss variety too, only having 4 outside of the final fight against Mundus, those being Phantom, Griffin, Nightmare, and Nilo Angelo. Phantom and Griffin are fairly decent, Nilo Angelo is fantastic, but Nightmare and Mundus aren't all that good. Nightmare is slow, takes a lot of time, requires a specific method to make it vulnerable, and even forces you to fight various bosses should it hit you with a certain attack. Look, just because I enjoyed fighting those bosses once, doesn't mean I want to fight them again. And Mundus starts with a really annoying bullet hell stage, then forces you to go through a regular fight with him when you're going to be really low on health, and it all goes downhill from there. Oh, and you fight all of these Sans Mundus 3 times each. Feels a bit strange they do this, same goes for the sudden gameplay change for the final boss, but like with those previously mentioned limitations, it's most likely the devs are still testing the water with these new ideas, and still figuring out what works with this new type of game. Hey, you gotta start somewhere after all. But despite these noticeable drawbacks and limitations, I still enjoyed it to a degree, and I respect the hell out of it for what it is, managing to stand the test of time and what it did for action games going forwards. If it weren't for Devil May Cry, we probably wouldn't have gotten games like Bayonetta, Stellar Blade, God of War, or Metal Gear Rising. However, while I do respect it, I have to take those issues I have with it into account for the scoring, knocking it down to a respectable 7 out of 10, or high beat. Jak and Daxter, another series where going back to the first installment feels very strange. I can't even call it first game syndrome, the series drastically overhauled its entire gameplay and overall aesthetic from the second game onwards, going from a more light-hearted 3D collectathon platformer to a more open-ended 3D platformer slash third-person shooter hybrid similar to Ratchet & Clank. This isn't first game syndrome, this is straight up early installment weirdness. I honestly had no idea what to expect going into this one. I first played it once about 10 years ago, and I'll admit I completely forgot about it. Don't get me wrong, I did remember playing and liking it, but everything else was kind of a blur. So in a way, this revisit was more so like me playing it for the first time again, and honestly, it's a pretty solid 3D platformer. So, anyways, how does it feel to play nearly 20 years after release? Honestly, pretty good. You've got your standard 3D platform abilities, double jump, spin attack, dash punch, ground pound, and your occasional power-up, which in this case comes in the form of 3 colors of a substance known as Eco. Well, technically there's 5, but the green stuff just heals you, and dark Eco instantly kills you. So, red gives you double attack power, yellow lets you shoot fireballs, and blue gives you a speed boost. And also open doors, and activate lifts, and draw precursor orbs to you, and activate other things. Honestly, it feels like blue Eco does a bit too much, to the point where it makes red and yellow feel a bit wimpy by comparison. What sets the Precursor legacy apart from other 3D platformers of the time is that rather than having a level select screen or main hub world where you can access all the other levels, each level is almost seamlessly connected together. It's not quite a full open world, as some of them are hidden behind transition screens and those hoverbike sections, but it's still pretty impressive for the time. Honestly, there's not much to really go into depth here. It's just a solid 2000s era 3D platformer. Controls are pretty smooth, there's a decent difficulty curve, so it's not too hard but not so easy it's boring. A good variety of level themes, each level is easy enough to navigate. It's one of those games that's just charming fun. However, that's not to say it's without issues. Some of the later levels have power cells that can be an absolute pain to get, such as the hidden power cells in the volcanic crater, and a good chunk of them in the Lost Precursor City and the Spider Caves. And while I won't complain about each level having a free 7 Scoutflies power cell, most of them are pretty easy to find. What I will say is overused are the power cells earned by giving a set number of precursor orbs to certain NPCs and certain precursor statues. So if you're missing those, it goes from a fun exploration of the levels to a desperate scavenger hunt as you try to scrounge up enough orbs to pay for the power cell. This gets most egregious in the volcanic crater, as the miners you find there don't have just 1 or 2 power cells that they'll trade orbs for, but a whopping 4 of them, each requiring 90 orbs, meaning you'll need to cough up a total of 360 to get all of them. Some may call this a minor complaint, but for someone who likes to 100% complete 3D platformers like this, and most games in general, they hold it back enough that a 7 out of 10 or B tier is all I can really give it. Game's still really good though. Speaking of Ratchet & Clank, oh hey, would you look at that, it's a game I've not actually played before. Haven't seen one of those since SingStar, and also haven't had one with a segment of decent length since Stellar Blade. Once again, Ratchet & Clank, and if you couldn't tell by the footage is the original PS2 version, is another example of early installment weirdness, but this time it's a lot more downplayed. Feels like the devs were trying to solidify the story's identity more so they hadn't ironed out all the bumps and the little stumbling points yet. Hell, a lot of the jarring differences are more to do with the character writing, specifically our main duo, but we'll get to that in a bit. And before anyone asks, yes, I also own the 2016 game, however that is disqualified. Because contrary to popular belief, that game is not a remake or reboot, it's a tie-in game to the 2016 movie that was based on the first game. Essentially, the 2016 game is an adaptation of the 2016 animated movie, which itself is an adaptation of the original PS2 game from 2002. It's a recursive adaptation. Anyways, despite being the first entry, all the usual stuff you've come to expect from the Ratchet & Clank series is all here. A wacky assortment of weird and wonderful weapons, colourful levels that look like something out of a DreamWorks movie fused with a 1950s sci-fi comic, tight platforming that combines third-person shooter elements. Hell, if you've ever played a Ratchet & Clank game before, you'd know what to expect here. Sure, there's a couple of oddities, namely how you don't have access to all your weapons at once via the quick select, and the weapons don't upgrade into a stronger form once they hit level 5. But nearly all that can be excused as quality of life change that the developers would then go on to add in the sequels. What is a little interesting is how the titular duo are characterized here. Clank being a lot more naive makes sense, guy literally was just born yesterday. But Ratchet, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of hate Ratchet in this game. Sure, I can somewhat excuse his reluctance to get involved, but after the two get inevitably betrayed by Captain Quark, he just becomes a complete asshole for pretty much the rest of the game. He acts like an entitled little brat, only caring about getting revenge on Quark, despite knowing the villain's true plan and only deciding to, stop him once he's personally affected when his home planet is threatened. From what I understand, Insomniac actually took these criticisms on board and adjusted his character in the later games to become more heroic, and as someone who mostly played the PS3 era of the series prior to this, yeah, they definitely did. But man, is Ratchet extremely unlikable here. There's also a strange difficulty balance at various points. Not so much the difficulty itself, more so the money system and lacking various story-required upgrades behind minigames. What do I mean by this? Well, the game isn't that much easier or harder than your typical Ratchet & Clank affair, but for some reason ammo is significantly more expensive than other games in the series, so much so that a complete refill of all weapons in your quick select can very easily reach a cost of over 10,000 bolts. It naturally makes saving up to buy new and better weapons a lot more of a hassle than it needs to be, not helped by the fact that certain story-critical missions also have the infamous cash gate problem, where you can only progress if you hand over a set amount of bolts. Then, of course, we have the minigames, mainly the hoverboard one, because oh boy do I have issues here. This is honestly one of the worst minigames I've ever suffered through. You're incredibly slow, everyone else moves much faster than you, the only way to get more speed or keep your speed up is to hit a speed booster pad or booster ring and trick off various ramps. Also, a single crash basically means you've lost because there is no way going to make up that distance because of how fast the other racers are. Basically, it demands a perfect run. A 3-lap perfect run. Don't crash, don't hit a single hazard, don't fall off, make sure you take every single shortcut and hit every single speed boost. And they had the nerve to put a required story upgrade behind this. Despite these issues, if you're a fan of Ratchet & Clank, I definitely recommend picking this up, as you'll probably enjoy it for the most part. As for the ranking, I'm thinking a 7 out of 10 B tier honestly feels pretty fair. And with that, we are done with this batch of games. I'll meet you all back here once I come up with a title for the next video. Take care.